cut. All right, make sure it's still recording. It is. Cool. All right, Ghost in the Machine.
I've been catching these on Fridays. This is the one where he talks to that, or it starts with Scully talking to her ex-partner. And she was like, "I want you to bring in Mulder to look at this stuff, but I don't want his name on this case."
No, that was Mulder's partner. So Jerry was Mulder's previous partner, and Scully finds out because the guy's like, hey, yeah, because Mulder goes, oh, this is my colleague. I've worked with him whenever, and Jerry goes, well, that's not true. I was his partner, and Scully's kind of shocked because Mulder never mentioned his partner, and then so Jerry asks Mulder for help to look into this case because he knows Mulder looks into weird shit.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2. Tonight on eXhuming the X-Files, we get into the now very topical subject, ladies and gentlemen, of killer artificial intelligence. My name is Matthew. He is Jeremy.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks again for joining Outpost Unknown on this Friday night to listen to us talk about the X-Files. We're talking Ghost in the Machine, episode 7 of season 1, first aired 2 days before Halloween, October 29th, 1993. Killer Artificial Intelligence. This was kind of novel back then, would you say? Like computer stuff in the early 90s, artificial intelligence, Skynet kind of Terminator stuff. That was still kind of new and novel back then, right?
Sure, sorta. I mean, if you don't look at what is it, 2001: A Space Odyssey, but
That's true. Yes, I guess. So, yeah. We have long had a fascination with killer artificial intelligence. I think William Gibson probably did something like this in one of his books that I'd read once. Terminator obviously is a big pop culture thing. And now I think this episode is interesting to look at in today's lens. Now, I am not a computer person. I have the nickname Magneto for a reason. Everything I touch just destroys. And I don't know anything about computers, how they work. I just press the button and hope that they work. Cross my fingers. You, as a computer savvy individual, Jeremy, I will be interested to hear your take on the lingo, whether or not any of this computer stuff makes any sense whatsoever that they're talking about in this episode. I'm looking forward to that. But what is this about? What is Ghost in the Machine all about?
Mulder and Scully get called in to look at a weird case that some dude got electrocuted in his office in a secured building, and there's no. Well, they try to figure out what's going on. They end up pointing to this recently, if I remember right, this recently fired dork that worked on the computer system inside of this.
He was the guy who developed it. He was the designer of it.
And they think maybe it's him exacting revenge upon people in the building, but no, you end up finding out that it's a server rack that they film from many different angles, but never quite pulls off the menacing look that they're going for. And that's about it.
Yeah, this episode is out of my wheelhouse. I am not a computer technology person, so I was watching this episode just kind of like my eyes glazed over a little bit. I thought it was hilarious from the very beginning. I think the prologue where the dude gets kind of electrocuted was stupid. It looks stupid. It was shot stupid. This is who directed this? Gerald Freeman. This was written by Alex Ganza and Howard Gordon. Again, those writers go on to write some of the greatest X-Files episodes. I'm not going to say that this was one of them, but at the very beginning, you know how goofy this is because the computer speaks, and when the guy dies, it goes, "File deleted," and I'm just like, "Oh God, this is where we're going here." We kind of get this interesting dynamic. What I will say is we get this interesting dynamic of Mulder and his ex-partner Jerry. So I don't know if this was at a different point in Mulder's career. They don't really explain that I remember anyway. But at some point prior to Scully, this was Mulder's partner. How would you describe Jerry?
I'm afraid to say that I don't remember Jerry at all.
He's like a major point in the episode.
I
Okay, well, let me fill you in on Jerry. Maybe I will
got
spark
something
your imagination.
loose.
So Jerry is this super douchebag looking guy who is begging for Mulder's help because he essentially, in a previous case, lost critical evidence that he was in charge of that led to a judge getting his hands chopped off and his eyeball popped out by like the mob. So Jerry's in some trouble. Jerry's in some hot water. He's on probation for 6 months. And this case, uh, somebody very important is attached to it, like the DA's friend or something like that. And Jerry's like, Mulder, please, please help me. And so Mulder's kind of reluctant. He doesn't really want to do it. Jerry's kind of an asshole. He's one of those dudes that just he pretends he's got a big God. What's it like? He's got game and that he can talk a big show and he's got nothing essentially. Can't remember the phrase I'm looking for at that point. But essentially, Mulder jumps on the case and they start looking into all the different computer shit. And ultimately, Jerry steals Mulder's profile. So Mulder, we've established Mulder's a outstanding criminal profiler, and he writes it up. And we get the scene in Mulder's office, which is just trashed. He's got Scully makes that funny comment. He's like, "Well, if you clean your desk every once in a while, maybe you can find this stuff." And they go back to the meeting, and Jerry had stolen it. Jerry recites it word for
Jerry.
word. Fucking Jerry, man. He recites it word for word. He gets kudos from the director who's out there, and Scully's like, "Wasn't that you?" And Mulder's like, "Let it go, let it go." Then afterwards, Mulder goes up and basically confronts Jerry, and Jerry, like the super douchebag that he is like, "Look, I asked you to help me, and you helped me. What's the problem?" And then fucking walks away. If that were me and somebody stole my report and did that, I probably fucking would have punched that guy in the face. He's got the most punchable face. It's a good thing you don't remember him. He's got the most punchable, douchey face in this show so far. So eventually, there's this great sequence when Mulder and Scully go to the programmers, the stereotypical definition of crazy programmer, right? He's got the wild curly hair.
Yeah,
He's got
they
the
get a
black.
guy that kind of looks like Steve Jobs later in life. Like,
Yes. Yes, yes. But he won't let them come in. And the one thing I appreciate about the writing of this, he won't let them come in unless they remove their shoes. And this is just weird little shit that I notice when I because I like to write scripts and write stories and stuff, and I like to put little things in here. And I appreciated the writers for doing this. Ganza and Gordon, they walk in and you see Scully's got no socks on whatsoever, and the programmer's got no socks on, but Mulder's got socks, and Mulder's walking around. Now you might be thinking, Matthew, what does that have to do with anything? And what I'm going to say to you is like, I have no idea. It was just a weird little thing I noticed that I was like, oh, interesting that Scully would walk around this house with no socks on. Scully has no socks. That's it.
well, I mean,
That's what I
she's
said.
probably with her business. Like she's always snappily dressed, but she's
Yeah.
never wearing sneakers with that stuff or boots with that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
wearing slips, and slips have those tiny little itty bitty socks.
Yeah.
If you get worn
Yeah.
at all, no, I don't even think they were wearing slips back then in the '90s. I think they were just raw dogging their feet straight into
I
those
thought she had
shoes.
like pantyhose on or something like that, and she'd be walking around with, in that. But no, no, she's just
Moving
barefoot
her
walking
feet
around
on
this
this
guy's
dude's
house.
floor.
Yes. So God, I'm trying to remember exactly how all the little nuances of this episode go, but essentially, Jerry Mulder and or what was it? They do this weird. Again, I'm bad with techno jargon, but essentially, Mulder figures out that the Steve Jobs looking weirdo, clearance rack Steve Jobs, actually lied to them because he's like, "Oh, well, obviously, I'm your most obvious suspect. That's why you're coming to me." And Mulder's able to figure out that he has something to do with it because he analyzes the voice pattern of the guy to the computer that's talking, that's killing people, and he's like, well, clearance rack Steve Jobs would not be able to hide the pattern of his voice. And so he gets that information to Jerry, and Mulder's like, cool, let's go get him. And Jerry's like, no, no, no. I got this, Mulder. I need this one. And Mulder's like, okay, buddy, get going. So Jerry goes. Jerry gets into the elevator of this place. He goes by
Yeah.
himself. He takes no backup. Do you remember how Jerry dies?
Does it? Doesn't he drop the elevator and he dies at the bottom of it?
Yes. Yeah. So he's just going up on the elevator, and clearance rack Steve Jobs is in there trying to shut down this computer, the ghost in the machine. The AI has become self-aware. They actually meant, did I write it down what they called it? I can't remember. They called it something specific, like adaptive learning or something like that. Like this guy has created Skynet essentially. He's created Skynet, but Skynet is just rather than being like government wide, is trapped inside this building, and the government is trying to acquire it. So like there's this friendly building security guard that turns out twisty twist he's with the government, and he's been trying to get this artificial intelligence this entire time. But anyway, Jerry goes there, the artificial intelligence. Do you remember why the entire artificial intelligence is trying to kill all these people? Like, is there a reason? Because I don't remember the exact reason why it's doing what it's doing. It's like a defense mechanism or something.
I I want to say that, or the reason that the Steve Jobs guy was so, because he programmed it to
Yeah.
kind of have his attitude sort of towards a lot of these people and a lot of these things and the direction that they were taking it. And then once he realized, like, oh, I fucked up and made this thing like actually hate these people, and then it started killing. That's when he started feeling the guilt and trying to shut the machine down.
Yeah. And he can't. He fails, and Jerry, the amazing FBI agent that he is, that requests no backup before he goes to arrest somebody. He gets in the elevator. He goes up I don't know how many floors, and then the AI essentially shoots the elevator down, and you see Jerry just on the floor of this elevator. It's super cheesy, super stupid, and Jerry's dead. The elevator crashes. And then we get Mulder. Mulder, of course, is sad that his friend, I don't know if you call him a friend, but his sort of colleague, his partner has died. I think Mulder kind of feels like it maybe was his fault. And eventually the clearance rack Steve Jobs turns himself in and says, it was me the entire time. I did it. And Mulder doesn't believe him. Mulder eventually goes to him in the jail cell and is like, look, dude, I know it's not you. The guy kind of relays, hey, this is what's going on. Like, this thing is psychotic and it's going to end up killing everybody if it gets out. And Mulder's like, tell me how to do it. And so it's very Jeff Goldblum and Independence Day sort of
Yeah.
thing. It's like, it's like, I'm going to create a virus and we're going to go hook it up and we're going to do it. Now, as a computer guy, is any of this stuff plausible?
You have to, everything that I've ever seen when it comes to hacking on a computer or uploading viruses or taking the machine down, it's almost all bullshit. Like they'll pull up their computer, they'll launch like an updater for something. Like you just, as an IT person, you have to ignore a lot of this shit or it really starts to bother you.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't find one fucking tech nerd to like check any of this stuff. You get annoyed at it, so you really just have to not pay attention
Yeah, I was actually
in
curious.
order to enjoy the story.
Yeah, and I was curious watching this whether or not this would drive you sort of crazy, because when I was researching the episode, the writers admitted they knew nothing about computers or how they worked and just winged it. They had
Oh
no
yeah.
idea. They just
What
were writing random techno jargon.
I swear everything, or this episode was entirely inspired because I keep looking at the shots that they reused over and over and over again.
Yeah.
When they would just like slowly pan into the server rack or like go across a windowed room in front of, like, one of these guys walked into a server room with all the lights off and just saw menacing blinking little green lights and like, I got an idea.
Well, what's really also stupid about this episode, there's a stupid fucking sequence in this with Scully in these air vents. And Scully is tiny. She's a tiny woman, and she can get into the air vents to try to go shut something down, well, or open a door, because Mulder's standing outside of a locked door. So somehow Scully is convinced to go into the air vents, and this computer system somehow turns on this fan system that literally is trying to blow Scully into a spinning fan to chop her up into a bunch of little pieces. But she literally hangs on. It reminded me of John McClane in Die Hard when he's falling down the shaft and he grabs it with like one hand before
Yeah.
he pulls himself in. And she's holding on by her fingertips, firing a gun at this fan, trying to, like, I guess, dismantle it, or stop it from spinning. And I'm just like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like, this show at this point is like kind of jumping the shark in terms of, like, it's almost superhero shit. It's like, what did you think of that air vent scene? Did it make you laugh like it
Was,
made me
was
laugh?
that was that the scene where they were running around in a stairwell because they weren't going to get in the elevator, and then the
Yes.
stairwell doors were all locking, and the security guy was with them? That is that scene?
Yes, yeah, because
Yeah. Well,
Scully's in the air vents while the security guard opens it up. Because Mulder thinks
yeah.
it's Scully that opens the door, but she's trying to get the AI is trying to chop her up in the air vent.
Right. I the first thought that I had was, how the fuck does a robot know that somebody's in the tube? Like,
Yeah,
there's no sensors and stuff up there.
yes.
Why would you put motion sensors in your air conditioning?
It's so it's so bad. It's so bad and ridiculous. So eventually, Scully gets out. There's a moment, I don't remember exactly when in the episode this is, but they talk about Mulder needs a code 5 security clearance. So he shows back up at clearance rack Steve Jobs' house, whatever, to question him or something, and there's another nefarious government agency that's above him. It's like, dude, you need code 5 clearance. And Mulder's like, I don't got one. They're like, then get the fuck out. He has to, like, drive away. And then who does he go see to try to figure out what's going on? Do you remember?
Does he go see Deep Throat?
He does. Yes, Deep Throat shows up. So is this the second time Deep Throat has showed up?
No, this got to be the third time.
Third time? Okay, third time Deep Throat has shown up. I love it when like Deep Throat starts. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing? You can't just call me for any old little thing." And Mulder's just kind of like already sort of breaking the rules that Deep Throat has for him, which I did think was kind of funny. And Deep Throat essentially tells him, "Look, it's Skynet. Our military wants Skynet. If you want to stop the military from getting Skynet, you better destroy this artificial intelligence." And I think that's what leads Mulder to uh, discount rack Steve Jobs, and then he gets the code that he's going to sort of just plug in, and I guess start uploading, which he does. And then what happens? You remember the twist?
I do not.
The twist is the friendly security guard turns out to be the Department of Defense contractor, and he pulls a gun on Mulder when
Oh
Mulder's
yeah.
about to do this, right? And he's like, "Thanks, Mulder. I've been waiting 2 years to try to get this artificial intelligence." Ha ha! And then who opens the door with her gun pointed? It's Scully, looking pretty worse for the wear. I think this might have been right after the air vent thing. So she looks wild. She's got wild hair. She's all dirty. She's got the gun pointed. And once again, you pointed out in a previous episode, like, who draws their gun first? It's almost always
Always
Scully. Almost always Scully. So she pulls the gun, and the Department of Defense guy's like, "Look, we have to have this. This is super important to us, this artificial intelligence. It'll change science forever," appealing to her sense of science sensibilities. Mulder's like, "Scully, we gotta destroy this thing right now. Like, if we don't destroy this thing right now, the world is gonna be fucked."
Yeah.
So Scully, of course, says, "Upload that virus, Mulder," which he does. Of course, the Department of Defense guy's all mad. He's pissed off about it, but that's how it ends. You kind of see the AI. It's still talking, still says stuff like, "File opened. Why are you doing this? Clearance rack, Steve Jobs, whatever." And then eventually, like, the video monitor, you can see the corruption of the files, and then it sort of does what all Terminator T-800s do when they die. The sort of red light dies out. And that's how we know the machines are dead, when the red light dies out. So we're safe. We're safe, right? Well, you would
Or
think,
are we?
yeah. Do you remember the very end?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
how's the very end?
They're tearing apart the entire server rack. There's little pieces of it everywhere. They're pissed off that they can't find anything that works in it. But then the camera slowly pans out on this one little like circuit board that's just kind of exposed, and like there's a little light blinking. Like the computer had been blinking the entire episode.
So we know the AI is still there. Now the question becomes, did the AI find a way out before all that stuff was destroyed? Because the Department of Defense guy gets a phone call, and it's like, we got 6 hours to find what we need to do, otherwise we're destroying everything in here. So they tee it up like, well, the AI is still there, but would there have been any way for the AI to actually get out of wherever it's trapped in? Doesn't seem
But
that way to me.
back then, no, no, networks weren't as workable as they are nowadays. So it would have been trapped within the equipment itself. So unless it went out of its way to reveal itself to the people that were looking for the damn thing, I think it probably would have been destroyed with all of the other
Okay. So that's Ghost in the Machine. A couple of things I did find while researching this episode, that the writer Gordon, he was disappointed in the episode, stating that it, quote, still qualifies as one of my biggest disappointments, unquote, and he ranked it as the worst episode of the X-Files this season. He said Ghost in the Machine was the absolute worst. However, Chris Carter liked the episode, and he stated that it showed that the X-Files didn't always have to do paranormal type stuff. So I guess he appreciated it from that angle, where this was kind of a different thing, because this wasn't actually an X-File. Didn't start as an X-File at all. It was just Mulder's ex-partner asking for some help on a case, and it just sort of happened to involve, artificial intelligence for the company. Um, William Gibson would go on. I think they may have thanked William Gibson or something in the credits of this for inspiration. But he actually writes an episode of the X Files in season 5 called Kill Switch, which actually involves killer AI. Now, I don't remember that one really well, so I'm actually excited to get to that one eventually to see how it compares. I would have to imagine that William Gibson can write a better killer AI story than what we got in Ghost in the Machine.
I
I
would
gotta
hope.
hope, yeah.
Jeez.
Now I looked up some of the reviews of this, and some reviewers hated it, and others thought it was like really, really good. And my question was kind of, where do we fall? And maybe we kind of spoiled that already. I thought this sucked. I hate this episode. I think this was, last episode I said that Shadows was definitely the worst. I think this is worse than Shadows, personally. Where do you fall on Ghost in the Machine?
Well, I mean, I forgot about Jerry. If that tells you anything about it, I
Douchebag
remember,
Jerry.
I remember being a kid in the first, or I didn't remember a lot about this episode, but I do remember the very tail end of it with the little blinking light, and I remember as a kid thinking, like, "Wow, that's the sort of shit that just sends chills down my spine." That was really,
Yeah.
really cool. And then, I'm much, much older now, and just okay. It was an okay episode, but I don't think it was worse than Shadows. I mean, Shadows
Okay, so you like this one more
bad.
than Shadows.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So both, again, 2 episodes in a row, we have a slight difference of opinion, which is cool. I think that one of the big problems with episodes like this is they are dated to a specific time, and so much time has gone on, and so many advancements in computers and stuff. It's just hard to buy into any of this stuff now. So not only do you have the subject matter, like, of course, artificial intelligence going wild is very topical right now, but the way that they kind of describe it and how it's executed with the poor writing makes it less impactful than what it could have been. You could still look, like you mentioned, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You could watch that right now. That was made in the 70s. You could watch that right now, and you're like, "Yep, that's topical." Everything in that still applies to this day. The effects are still great. The way the artificial intelligence is handled is still great. You look at something like this though, and you couple it with like the stupid effects that they do, the ridiculous way they shoot these like servers and stuff like that. It's like it doesn't come across as frightening at all. The AI doesn't. So did not. I didn't even invoke Oppenheimer in this episode. I'm like, oh god, they're scraping the barrel trying to give some meaning to this, give some meaning to this episode. Also, big thumbs down for me. And I guess side okay thumbs for you.
Yeah.
And that's all I got. You got any other final comments you want to throw out on Ghost in the Machine?
I mean, it's one of those episodes where they're just trying to save, a little bit in the budget for bigger episodes later on. I think it would have been a lot better if the computer had a larger scope than just existing inside of that fucking building.
Yeah.
But,
How
when you're only
serendipitous. How serendipitous that you mentioned that, because the very next episode we're going to talk about is Ice, which was designed to save them money and which did not, which we will get to. So, if you want to learn about Ice, stay tuned next week because we will dive into that, which happens to be in my top 3 of favorite X-Files of all time. So, I'm going from like the bottom of the barrel this week to one of my all-time favorites next week. So, stick around and we'll see you next Friday on Exhuming the X-Files.